Hello and welcome to UAT Time within the United Countries Special by First Ukraine. You can find us on the frequencies available on our website, firstuat.com. I'm Sergey Velichanskiy.
And I am Olivier Vedrine. UAT Time is dedicated to bring Ukraine and Europe closer to each other by introducing the real Ukraine to the rest of the world.
It has been a year and a half since Maidan took place, and we continue meeting people who bring us insights in order for us to have full understanding. But not only that, we can't live for the past, we need to move on. And at this time, we try to keep an eye on the pulse of Ukrainian society and on the life of foreigners who have lived here for a while and understand the situation from the inside. As Alan Watts once said, the only way to make sense out of changes is to plunge into it, move with it, and dance, and join the dance. That's the kind of guest we've got today.
Our guest today is Paul Niland, a businessman, a journalist, a unique person who closed down his business when Maidan started and never regrets that decision.
Welcome, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much for inviting me on the show.
Can you give us a brief understanding? How did it happen? Like you, for many years, you were a co-founder of a publishing, and you actually produced one of the most popular magazines in Kiev. And then what happened?
What happened was the revolution happened. Yeah, I was the co-owner of PAN Publishing, and one of our titles was a very well-known magazine in Kiev, the English language weekly guide that everybody picked up and everybody loved. And my partner and I were actually the third owners of What's On, and prior to owning it, I was just one of these regular guys who picked it up every Saturday. I went to the pub to watch football, and you'd pick up What's On and see what was happening for the weekend, and then had the opportunity to purchase the magazine together with my then business partner Neil Campbell. But when the revolution started, we didn't know what was going to happen. Nobody knew how long it was going to take, what would be the outcome. And we plowed on, but our advertising revenues were dropping, and we came to a decision, not at the beginning of Maidan, at the end of Maidan. In fact, we just caught the end of Maidan after Yanukovych fled. Our last What's On included photographs from inside of the Mezhigir mansion that he still denies to this day that he owned. But we were in there in the very first wave of people that went in there the day after he left. We photographed it, we put it in the magazine, and that was when we then had to close What's On, sadly, for financial reasons.
Okay, okay. Yeah, did you have some pictures of those ostriches that he took care of?
We didn't.
He supported them?
He supported the ostriches. We didn't take pictures of the ostriches, but we did take pictures of his galleon, of the big white horse that sits next to the house, and the gardens and stuff.
And it wasn't his, yeah.
No, it wasn't his, apparently.
All right, but then actually Olivier was quite heavily involved in Maidan as well.
Okay.
You didn't cross paths there.
It was cold.
Actually, everyone was so dressed you wouldn't even recognize.
Yeah, I was in the headquarters in the traditional house.
Okay.
And sometime I was also on the barricade. I came on the revolution, the beginning of December, end of November, until the end of February.
Well, here's what you know. I have a whole list of questions, but really, something that came up is you had done business before the revolution.
Sure. Yeah.
And you're a foreigner, and so you had the freedom to do the business. Why do you think Maidan is any good? Like, seriously, for you, because you stopped your business because of Maidan, but definitely yes, because of the other things. But really, it's one thing if you just arrived and you could say, oh yeah, we've got some freedom, but you had done business before. Yes. What's the difference?
I think I understand the question. First of all, yes, I did business before. I've lived in Ukraine now for 12 years, more than 12 years. And so I have some experience of the other revolution as well. I was here during the Orange Revolution. I was here during the Euromaidan Revolution. But the question is, was it any good? The effect that it's had on me closing my then business. We're starting a new business now, which is quite interesting, in fact. But Yeah, I'm not a selfish person. What happened then? Okay, we've individually gone through hardships because of the economic situation following Maidan. it was a big shock to the economy of the country. However, looking at the big picture, without doubt, it was absolutely a good and positive development for the country that the Yanukovych era politicians, that regime, have gone, and now we have replaced them with reformers, with people dedicated to the country instead of dedicated just to making themselves billionaires.
You were at the Orange Revolution.
I was on Maidan every single day during the Orange Revolution, yeah, and during the Euromaidan Revolution. It lasted 93 days, and I was there 89 out of 93 days.
For you, what is the difference between those two revolutions?
The difference, I find it difficult to pay a compliment to somebody like Leonid Kuchma, but I would say that he was the difference because Yanukovych at that time in the Orange Revolution wanted to use force, and Kuchma, who was the ultimate authority, he was the president, he said no. He would not allow the use of force against civilians. And Yanukovych, when he was the ultimate authority in the period of the Euromaidan revolution, well, we know what happened. So that's the major difference. The atmosphere was quite different. I would say as well that the Orange Revolution was more of a party atmosphere every single day, and very soon after Euromaidan started, it became two separate things. There was the throughout the week, the day-to-day trudge, it was quiet during the week. And it was only busy on the weekends. It was only on that Saturday and Sunday when people turned out en masse on Maidan. And really, Maidan was held during the week to facilitate those weekend protests. But the weekends were, in Euromaidan, they were electrifying. You were there, you were there. You know, standing amongst 1 million people who were shouting "Bandu Khet," out with the bandits. That was incredible. It makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up now when you remember it, right?
Yes, that's true. But Maidan has introduced quite an interesting phenomena to the whole world, to my understanding. At least, some journalists support that. The volunteers phenomena. At the point of the most threat, more people came.
Yes.
People weren't afraid. I mean, when subway stopped, people just got taxis. Taxi cab drivers brought people for free into Maidan and out of Maidan.
Yes, they did.
And it, and many other things, food, lodging, and all that. But it hasn't stopped. What the good thing is, it hasn't stopped. When Crimea annexation took place, people started helping the Crimeans, in exile, pretty much, the refugees. And then when Donbass, and people are still helping. And you're involved in some of that. Tell us more about this. About the phenomena. What do you see? What's...
I'm not sure that it came from Ukraine. I think we've seen the self-organization of people and the contribution of volunteers to events after Maidan, like as we saw in Hong Kong, for example, with their umbrella protests that they were doing there.
Oh, I'm Ukrainian. I like to think that it's
but this is a natural behavior. When you have a crisis, you have this phenomenon of volunteers.
Yes.
This is the psychological way of thinking of humanity. You have volunteer when you have a crisis.
You're exactly right, and it is the greatest example of something that was said during the revolution many times, that the 5th article of the Constitution is that the power lies with the people. And that is the best explanation of the volunteers phenomenon. It is the power of the people. When a collective of people comes together with a large enough, significant enough number, then they can achieve great change. And this is what we saw. Вибачте, будь ласка, I'm sorry, my friend, but before the Ukrainian revolution, in North Africa, in places like Tunisia, in places like Egypt, and that is how these events take place. But it was the same. Okay, if you want to bring it back to the Ukrainian thing and bring it back to the Orange Revolution, people organized the same way in the Orange Revolution.
I was there too, actually. Yes.
But you are right. We saw that in the Arabian Spring Revolution.
Yeah,
the same.
Yeah, precisely.
The same phenomenon.
The people will come and people will participate because And more as time moves on or as technology moves on, and we have now these great devices, whether they're sitting on the desk or in our pockets, you know, where we've got access to information. And it's that access to information that allows people to organize, but also brings people to the ability to understand why they need to organize, what's going on. And I recently wrote an article that was published in the Kiev Post, and I was saying there that the people understood immediately, even after the events of December the 1st, where we saw this ridiculous construction site, earth mover machine that was on Bankovo outside the presidential administration. And then through social media, people identified the guy that was sitting on the front going, "Na storm, na storm." And he was, you know, storming the presidential administration. He was a Berkut officer. Through facial recognition, you know, software, we identified who he was. This news was spread, and people are seeing this on social media and saying, "This is just wrong," you know, and it infuriated people even more. And it was that, the arrogance and the stupidity of the way that the Yanukovych authorities acted that brought people on even more. But sorry, I've gone away from your question. No. Your question, I think, was about what I'm doing and ways that I've been helping to raise money for the army. I've been involved in a few different projects, and I don't really need to talk about them all because everybody's doing something, right? I'm grateful for you inviting me to the channel today to come and talk about my experiences, but I'm one of millions of people. There was a billboard that was popular during the revolution, "Ya krapli v okean," I'm a drop in the ocean. Yeah, that's what I am with the ways that I'm helping to raise money for the volunteer efforts. But one of the early ideas that we had was something that we thought was quite interesting, an interesting way to raise money for the Ukrainian army, and that's turned into something that's in fact our new business, and is turning into a way to raise money for lots of good causes around the world. So we founded this business called Statement Email, and the original concept was, if we bought a domain name that was somehow supportive of the Ukrainian cause, and then allowed anybody to register their name or register an email address, their name at this particular domain, and charge people a simple registration fee and give a part of that money to the Ukrainian army. We're crowdfunding for the Ukrainian army, but now people get an email address that says something about who they are and what they care about. So, for example, the first offering that we have with Statement Email is ukrainianpatriot.com. Your email address, you wrote to me yesterday, it's at gmail.com. Gmail's cool, it's a great system. I use it all the time. All of my email addresses run through Gmail. But instead of you, in the future, communicating to people and that part of your email address just says, you know, who is your email service provider, now it can say, Sergey Velichanskiy at ukrainianpatriot.com. And so we have a range of domains that we've registered, and we're going to use this as a way of crowdfunding for really important global issues such as climate change, such as animal rights, such as equality issues as well. And this is the direction that we're going in right now, and it was inspired by the need to raise money, first of all, for the Ukrainian army, but now we're applying it to lots and lots of different global charitable causes.
Let's talk about the Ukrainian army and the volunteers. I am working now as an advisor about a law to give to the foreigner who serve in the Ukrainian army a status, you know? And what is your opinion about those volunteers, foreign volunteers in the Ukrainian army, and how you think we can give to them a status? Because we have a problem now, a law problem. And now we are working on this law with the Rada. They asked me to give some advices, like the French Foreign Legion, you know, we are doing we have some rules, you know. And I want to know your opinion about the status we can give to those foreigners who are in the Ukrainian army.
I think, first of all, that anybody that's come to Ukraine and volunteered to participate in this war, there was a journalist, an American journalist, embedded in the town of Pisky next to the airport in Donetsk for a week, which was about a month ago. His name's Nolan Peterson. And I was reading an article that he wrote just 2 days ago, and he was saying that his own combat experience, he's now a journalist, but he was formerly, I think, a Marine in the United States Marine Corps. Certainly he has US military experience. And he was saying that there in Iraq, they would kit up on base, and they would go out, and then, you know, they would go to a certain area, and that was where they would have contact. But in Pisky, you could lose your life at any moment. You're constantly under attack. The fighting almost is without pause. And so what's going on here, the way that the fighting is going, it's really, really intense. So anybody that has come to join that conflict because they understand quite simply that Ukraine is standing up to naked and unprovoked aggression from Russia. Let's be honest about this. That's precisely what it is. We all know that that's what it is. Yeah. So the people that have come to join that effort, that cause, I think they should be recognized as Ukrainian heroes. And I know you use the example of the French Foreign Legion. I know that the status that people have when they finish their service period with the French Foreign Legion entitles them always to the assistance and support of the French state.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that Ukraine should consider conferring the same kind of honor on the foreigners that are fighting on behalf of the Ukrainian army. But I do think that we should point out that it's a relatively small number as well. I mean, we're talking about
200, 300.
I was going to say several dozens, maybe a couple of hundred, but 200, 300, I think is as much as we're talking about. What we're talking about from the other side, you know, the OSCE have 2 border control points that they're allowed to monitor. Out of a 450-kilometer stretch, they can see like 400 meters here and 400 meters here. And through those control points, in a 12-month period, they lodged 20,012 Russian citizens crossing over the border. Now, I don't believe for a second that Russia could not stop these people if they did not want to. Of course they can. But they are the actual documented numbers of people coming over. So we're talking about 200 fighting on the side of Ukraine. And we're talking about 20,000 that are monitored coming in. What about the rest of them that are coming in that are unmonitored as well? So, you know, the number of foreigners that are fighting on each side of this conflict are vastly, vastly different on each side. Yeah?
So that's probably no point to ask you a question about the civil war or invasion. So you've kind of just answered that.
I touched on it. You want to answer it more? The war was manufactured in the Kremlin. The war has been supplied by the Kremlin. The war has been supplied by the Kremlin's propaganda machine, who incites hatred and encourages genuine volunteers, as well as the serving Russian military personnel that are forced to cross over and come and fight in Ukraine as well. Absolutely,
some of them are forced.
It's not a civil war. Of course, it's not a civil war.
This is a war.
It's a war. It's a war, and I think one of the questions that you mentioned to me earlier was why isn't either Ukraine or some of the other countries designating this a war? Why aren't they calling this a war? And I think that that's a very good question that I don't have the answer to, because I don't have their perspective. I don't know why they're not doing it. But I think it should have been called a war from the moment of the middle of July, middle of July of 2014, when we have documented Russian artillery missiles fired from Russian territory into Ukraine.
But we've touched some of that issue in some of our previous programs, that from one side, like for instance, Ukraine can't, you know, no country in the world would be allowed to help Ukraine if there is an official status of war in any way, financial or anything. And so our economy would be probably dead by now if we had announced status of war back then. And another thing is...
My opinion is that we are in a Munich mood. That means we don't want to talk about the war because we are afraid, and we think that everything will go on the right way. I think we are in the Munich way of thinking. And we are afraid about Russia. That's a fact. And I think this is a mistake, because Russia is not the Soviet Union. And I think at the end we will have to face Putin. This is a question of time. This is my opinion.
Yeah,
I think we're already facing Putin.
More strongly. We will face more strongly.
Will we face more strongly? In all likelihood, we will. I read today a tweet which came from a BBC journalist, in fact, who was saying that Zakharchenko, who's the leader of this DNR entity, created entity, said that they're ready for further military action, and my response to that was quite simple. And Twitter's great. You have 140 characters to make your point. That's it. Everybody gets exactly the same amount. It doesn't matter who you are. And I simply said, whatever statements Zakharchenko might make or actions that follow, the simple fact is that nobody outside of the territory that he controls wants to be part of the DNR. So what are they trying to do? You know, and they've for a long time, I say the proxies of the Kremlin as well as the people who manufactured this conflict, they for a long time pretended that this was about the will of the local people, and it wasn't. Just never was.
Never.
Yeah. Well, let's move on. What do you think in the current status? What do you expect, or what could we expect from European Union and the United States?
What can we expect, or what do we hope for?
What do we hope for? What do we hope for?
I'll say this. In my opinion, the status quo, the current events in Ukraine are more than enough to justify further sanctions.
Yes.
Stronger sanctions against more individuals, against more people. Lots of people talk about what could be the possibilities in banning Russia from SWIFT and extending visa bans to family members of those that are already sanctioned and so on and so on. I don't have the exact formula of what it is, but to be sitting back and saying, if this happens, if that red line is crossed, if this happens, it gives those that are fighting against Ukraine the opportunity to keep simmering this war, which is killing people every single day. And every single day I see reports that there are 2 servicemen killed in action, there are 5 servicemen killed in action, there are 4 civilians killed, 9 civilians killed. Every single day. That's enough now. This has to stop. And there are, as I say, I don't have the magic formula with the sanctions, but there are several things that we can tie things to. Number one, there must not be another single humanitarian convoy crossing illegally from Russia into Ukraine. The borders of Ukraine are defined. They are what they are. This is a sovereign country, and the borders must be respected. And if Russia sends in one more humanitarian convoy, that's enough to say you are not respecting the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine.
Yes.
And sanctions now step up. Because we all know what's in those humanitarian convoys, and it's not humanitarian aid. It's not food for the people. It's ammunition. Nobody's asking why in a 15-month-long contract these people have never once run out of ammunition. Come on.
Well, our time is nearly gone. Really,
that's unfortunate, really.
It runs so fast. But you know, when I thought of you, when you to come to the program, I thought of a proverb: "If heaven made him, earth can find some use for him." So that's about you, honestly, because and about us. Every one of us can do something to make life better. You know, in the surrounding area, or even on the level of country or international, doesn't matter, as long as we, don't sit and just do nothing. We can do something. Well, as the Chinese proverb says, better to light a candle than to curse the darkness. So are we. Made a choice to be the light of the candle and show the real Ukraine to the rest of the world. It was United Country UAT time by First Ukraine. Thanks for joining us for a cup of tea.
Olivier Vedrine and Sergey Velichanskiy were working for you in the studio. Stay with us and we will show to you the real Ukraine.
Thank you for being with us. Have a good day and see you soon.